Sometimes life gets crazy and it's just too easy to focus on all the negativity in the world. Welcome to the audio antidote to that. On this show, we highlight the amazing and positive work being done in the world to remind ourselves that there is hope out there for the future. And along the way, we'll pick up some new perspectives and ideas so we can all work together to make the world a little bit better. Because we know that when creativity and community come together, we can create good. This is Creating Good with Matt Barnes. Let's do it. Hey there, it's Matt Barnes, and this is another episode of Creating Good with Matt Barnes. That's me, yeah. Matt from Rogue, if you're looking for me anywhere online, that is my handle everywhere. And I'm excited because we got another episode here of good creating, like featuring good creating, the creating good. I don't know. I tried to mix it up because you say creating good so many times. It just starts to sound the same. But the whole point of this movement for creating good is just to highlight the fact that we all have resources, we all have skills, we all have abilities, we all have experiences that we can use to add to the world, to make the world just a little better. And when we come together, even more so. And I don't know about you, but every day it seems like all I hear about is all the negative crap, the stuff that's going wrong in the world. And it's nice to be reminded that some people out there are doing good. So if you want to be a part of this movement, you can listen to this podcast, subscribe. That's great. That's a good start. You can also go to creatinggood.co and you can take our pledge there for Creating Good. You get a little badge you can put on your website. We're going to have some more stuff for that coming soon. But we're trying to get 50,000 people to take the Creating Good pledge this year before the National Day for Creating Good that we've declared on October 16th. And so we are well on our way, and spread the word, man. We want people out there intentionally creating good because I don't know about you, but I think we need it a little bit more than maybe we ever have. That's the whole point. That's the focus. And this podcast is telling those stories, the people who are creating good. Today, we have an amazing guest with us. She is the president of the Humane League, not the Human League, which was a band from the 80s. No, this is Vicky Bond. She's from the Humane League, and she has been a formidable, that's a hard word to say sometimes, formidable force in the fight to end the abuse of animals raised for food. And she brings her extensive experience and passion to the global stage. The Humane League, under her leadership, has pushed for groundbreaking reforms in animal welfare and expanded its impact through strategic campaigns and international partnerships. She's done some really cool stuff. We have a lot of really great conversations, and I think you're going to be excited to hear. This is somebody who has taken something they're passionate about and used it to create good in the world. Vicky Bond, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. And I always, anytime I can get a good accent on the podcast, especially there's something about that British accent that just makes everybody feel smarter. I don't know what that is.
I'll take it. I don't think it's justified, but I'll take it.
So you're raising the bar here. You're lifting our reputation just by speaking. Before we jump in, we always start with a segment we call 3 random questions. I've got a list of like 120 random questions, and we've randomly chosen 3. I will say that for this one, they're not as random as they normally are because I saw a couple on there that I thought, oh, this would be perfect for her. So they are from the list, but they weren't randomly chosen. The last one was, but are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What was your first pet?
Oh, we had a rescue farm cat growing up. So we grew up near a farm. I grew up near a farm for the first few years. And her name was Toots. She was black and white. And I used to put her in a wheelbarrow and wheel her around the garden.
Oh, that's cute. Toots.
Because she made a noise like Toots.
Oh, nice. There you go. What is your spirit animal? What's your favorite animal you identify with the most?
Oh, that's a good question. This is one I've thought about before, and I'm always like, well, I'm sort of a cat, but I'm sort of not a cat. But I've got the energy of a cat sometimes. Sometimes I want to do the zoomies, and sometimes I just want to lie on the couch and do that.
Yes.
So I feel like that sometimes is good for me. But yeah, I'm trying to think about an animal. So it might be a spirit animal for me. I sound like I love cats. I do love cats. I'm fostering some right now, so that's probably why I'm now gravitating towards feline ways. I think Spirit. This is a good question that I haven't really thought enough about in the past. But I'm gonna stick with like like a cat, maybe like a cat that lives in a pride though, because I like being around people. So it can be like a lonely cat. It has to be a
Right.
cat that lives with other cats, I think. So
All right. All right. So are you a lioness then?
yeah, we'll go with that. Why not?
Okay, there you go. Okay, and then the one that truly was a random question. If you could add any sport into the Olympics, what would it be and why?
Oh, they just added into the Olympics climbing, which is something that I love.
They
So
did.
I've gone with that. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes, so climbing's just been added, and I've moved to the US and started loving pickleball. I don't know if that's it yet, but maybe that's a sport to add.
Yeah, yeah, I mean everybody's talking about pickleball. I've never played, but I don't know if it's an Olympic sport. I don't know, man. You think that you think you know all the Olympic sports, but there are so many that you've just never heard of.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe pickleball then if it's not in there. It's super
There you
fun.
go. All
Right.
right. Pickleball it is. Way to go. All right. Well, you have successfully passed the three random questions phase, and I'm saying you did well. So we get to move on to the interview phase now. You've cleared the bar. Tell us your origin story. Where did you come from? How did you get to where you're at, and what are you all about?
Yeah, well, in case you couldn't guess by what we just talked about, love animals.
Yeah.
Loved animals forever. For as long as I remember, I wanted to be a veterinarian. And I did pursue that. And in the moment I turned 14, I was at a veterinary clinic. Like the clinic we used to take our cat to, I was like, when can I work here? When can I work here? And she was like, when you're 14. So like 14 day, I got my 14th birthday. There I was like, I'm 14. Can I work here now, please? Um, and so I worked there at that clinic. It was really incredible. And I loved it. And then when I eventually got into vet school. And when I got into vet school, I really saw I was always vegetarian. I was already vegetarian by that time. I loved animals. I didn't want to eat animals as a consequence.
Sure.
But I hadn't really seen factory farming in real life. And actually, the vet school that I was at, Liverpool University in the UK, has a zero grazing dairy herd, which they're very proud of, but it's
Yeah.
basically industrialized dairy farming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I got to see firsthand the consequences of that. And we did a lot of different farm work. And we'd go on farms and we'd be treating these animals as a consequence of how much they're being pushed to produce. So in terms of dairy cows pushed to produce so much milk, their bodies can't cope and they have a lot of different diseases as a consequence of that. And I kind of felt like treating one animal is not making the change I want to see in the world.
Right.
And so I did some work with working animals as well, donkeys and horses. And I graduated as a veterinarian, practiced for a couple of years doing small animals while I was trying to get into the nonprofit space. Because
Okay.
that was the space I wanted to get into, to do policy work and that kind of thing that could make a large impact for animals. And I saw a job come up, Compassion World Farming, which is another organization that does anti-factory farming. And it was wonderful. I worked in research. It was like being able to use my veterinary knowledge and be able to kind of produce research for the organization. And then there was a job that came up in food business, which was what I wanted to do because I was missing the practical element in my job. So it's great to do. I love reading papers and doing all that,
Yeah.
writing. I love that. But I missed the practical application of things. And so when I did that work, I started working on factory farms and in slaughterhouses, getting companies to commit to higher welfare standards. And that was kind of with the nice approach. So we kind of would reach out to companies and say, like, I would like to help you with this. You should consider animal welfare in your supply chains. Let me work with you on this.
Sure.
Then go on the farms. But that gets to a point where it works, and then it gets to a point where companies are like, no, this is costing us money. We're not going to do this. Why would we do this?
Right. Right.
And that's where the Humane League comes in. So I was in the UK at the time, and my predecessor, David Humane-ity, was thinking of setting an office up in the UK, was saying like we want to bring the Humane League's approach, which is to engage companies to commit to higher welfare standards in their supply chains. And we will reach out to companies and ask them, like, will you consider this? But if they're like not going to engage with us, then we are going to launch campaigns, public
Yeah.
awareness campaigns about the cruelty in their supply chains.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, I'm ready for this. I feel I've got as far as I can with some of these companies, and I'm ready to like start launching campaigns to raise awareness about this. And so we did that in the UK. We have that here in the US. And I was there, built up the UK team over sort of 5.5 years. And then David stepped down from being president here at THL in the US. And so I moved to sunny San Diego and took over here in THL, and have been here 2 years now. It's flown by.
Okay.
Believe it.
How long has Humane League been around?
Over 15 years now.
Okay. So it's you're picking up a baton that
Yes.
has been running.
Very much.
But it sounds like there couldn't be a more perfect organization for you from where you've come from and what the things you care about,
Absolutely.
which is amazing for you to be able to find that outlet. Every time I see the Humane League, I'm sure I'm not the first person to say, but I think the Human League, the band,
Yeah, I'd like you to sing it. Normally someone sings it for us.
It's a little too early. I'm still warming up the pipes. That's so funny. Have you ever thought of doing a collaboration with them, doing some sort of...
I think they must get kind of frustrated because there must have been a time in the UK they'd write the Human League quite a few times. They must get notified. They're like, we're not working on ending factory farming. We're a band.
But maybe you should.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's definitely if we have like get-togethers and we will play the song because it's funny. It's very funny.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Obviously, this is an area that, I mean, every nonprofit is up against it, right? Like every nonprofit is out there trying to solve problems in the world somehow, and has the various challenges they have to overcome to do that, and at different levels, right? I was talking with somebody a couple weeks ago where they were talking about kids experiencing homelessness, and the fact that the government doesn't provide clothing. And I'm like, well, there's obstacles there, but also that's not a hard one to get people on board with. Like kids without clothes, kids need clothes. Like that's a pretty easy sell. You've got, awareness, you got to get out there, all that kind of stuff. But you've picked one of the more difficult topics, I would think, to break through on, right? You've got people who just don't care. You've got people, it's a subject that has been politicized so heavily. And you've got people whose livelihoods depend on this, and money's involved in all of these things. So I'm just curious, like, how do you, and we can get into some specifics, but in a minute, but just for yourself and for the organization, how do you keep going against some of these odds and some of these, these people or these situations that are just kind of stacked up against you in a lot of ways?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely is an under-resourced area, anti-factory farming work. If you think about animal protection at large, it's probably under-resourced compared to other movements. And then from animal protection, you take it to factory farming. So for sure, we've chosen a hard place to work.
Yeah.
But in terms of impact, the impact that we can have is phenomenal given the numbers of animals we're talking about. So 70 billion animals every year are factory farmed. And that's just the land animals. We're not talking about the fish or the shrimp here. So the impact is huge. When we work with companies, some companies like Sodexo serve 70 million meals every single day. If we were to try and get 70 million people to change their minds about something, that would be pretty hard. But getting a company like Sodexo to change, we can impact so much more. And that's millions of animals that we're helping. I think food is a tricky subject for people. So that's where we find a lot of challenge, where people, sometimes it can be really hard for people to hear the reality of what factory farming is. I get, a lot of people kind of think it's one-offs that we're talking about. And well, it's not every farm that's like that. And I'm like, well, I've been on a lot of farms. It really is every farm that's like that.
Yeah.
It's profit pushed over animals.
Yeah.
And you're right, there are livelihoods to be considered, but often, more than often now, honestly, those small farmers that everyone considers existing don't exist anymore. They've been completely wiped out. Every day they're packing up or they're leaving the industry because they can't compete with the pressure of the prices being pushed down on them. But the big companies like JBS, like Tyson, these huge, massive producers
Yeah.
that own everything, that push down the prices and mean that they can't make any money on what they're
Yeah.
doing. And then there's all this profit being made by these companies. And so we can, when we talk about it with people, I think there is an understanding about profiteering that these big companies do, and people don't trust them. And so that works in our favor because they shouldn't trust them because they are doing bad things. And we've just done the Common Enemy film. You can go to commonenemyfilm.com, I think, and watch it, but it's about a community in Oklahoma and the vast impact that factory farming has on that community, and it impacts the indigenous community, and impacts schools, it impacts like rural communities, often poorer communities as well. So this is a subject that unites people in many ways, because it is and does have a huge impact, not just on animals, but the environment and everything else, people's health, public health. We talk about avian influenza.
Yeah.
So we can engage people, but we can get cognitive dissonance as well that comes in, for sure.
So I want to watch that, but also, like, help when you say the impact it has on schools and these other things. What do you mean by that? Because I think a lot of people immediately just think like it's just about the animals, and not that shouldn't be enough, but you're saying that this practice is causing larger issues.
Yeah, absolutely. It's polluting, huge amounts of pollution. These animals, when you're talking, it's very hard, I think, for people to imagine. This is one of the other problems we face. It's like trying to get people to understand the numbers. You're talking about 9 billion chickens in the US are killed every year. There's more than the population in the world. Like, people can't really comprehend the volume of chicken that we're talking here. So on these factory farmings, there's thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of animals, and they're often next to these communities. And you can imagine the waste that these animals produce, right? They're just basically they're bred to make meat or dairy or whatever it might be. So they feed them as much as possible. And of course, that has consequences.
Sure.
And so you'll get this huge amount of pollution that will go into the waterways. So that pollutes the land. They actually spray it onto the land as well. Like pig manure gets sprayed onto the land. That pollutes the air. So people get high rates of lung disease and everything else. And then the water itself is polluted. So for the indigenous tribes, their land is being polluted. They can't actually live off their land anymore because of the consequence of this. And of course, there's schools nearby where they can't go outside because the air is too polluted for them to actually go outside. And we in our cities sit here quite comfortably, not knowing any of this is going on.
Exactly.
You drive, I have to say, in the US, you can drive down the freeway and see some of these massive dairy herds. Or kind of, you can see the thick air from all the pollution of just like the dust coming off and from their manure drying and in the air. And if you can imagine that, but with pigs or with chickens and living next to that, like, it is horrific. It's horrific for the animals and it's horrific for people.
So that's fascinating to me, because we don't hear about that, or at least not enough and not regularly. And it's I don't know, it's interesting to see that caring about how animals are treated actually is dealing with bigger issues than just that. It's a chain of consequences that people need to be aware of. What have been some of the biggest ways that you've been able to get that story out there? Because I'm a storyteller. My company, that's what we do, and we work with a lot of nonprofits, and we know, like, the best way to learn something is through experience, and most people, they can't go there and experience it. People live in the cities. We're blissfully unaware of what's happening there. So the next best thing is bring them into the story, like help them feel a part of that. How do you do that? How do you bring people into that? I mean, obviously you said you've got this documentary that's just come out or is coming out, and it's come out. Yeah. So that's great. But like, even for me, one of the things I'm trying to, we with this podcast and everything is working with nonprofits to see how we can all be more effective and learn from each other. And you get a documentary like Uncharitable that came out last year. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but a lot of people are not, and it's like that comes out, and the people that know about it we're all very excited, and okay, we're finally. But I can't tell you, even in the nonprofit sector, how often I find I'm like, oh, I refer to it, and they're like, I don't know anything about that. What are you talking about? Who is this person? What is this? And so it sometimes it feels like how do we make a dent in this huge thing? What are the things that you guys have found that have worked? And how do you bring people into this?
Yeah, well, I think when we're trying to get people to connect with the stories, it's telling stories, right? It's talking about an individual, because like I said, if we talk about the millions or billions of animals, it kind of disconnects people immediately. But if you talk about the individual, that helps bring people in. We have a challenge. We're talking about animals that are going to be slaughtered. So we don't get to talk to those animals. We don't get to, and the reality is they are still, we want to reduce consumption of meat. That needs to happen as well for the environment and for animals and everything else. But we're also pushing to end cages for laying hens. And so there's still going to be hens on farms, but they're not going to be in cages.
Yeah.
We might not be able to help the animals right now, but when those companies commit and follow through to fruition, we now have companies that have gone through and ended cages in their supply chains, and we're now at 40% cage free in the US. That's amazing. Wow. Started this where we're like 8%. So we're seeing that, and that's like 100 million animals every year. But again, I say that and people are like 100 million. So you have to go back to the hen, where you had like a Henrietta hen campaign when we talked about and like what it means for her to then come up, because she was rescued and one of our other animal welfare specialists housed her and cared for her, and she had sun for the first time, and she got to be outside for the first time, and like just like really meaningful things that people can connect to and understand.
Yes.
So that's really important. When we do peaceful protests, like I said, we go outside companies, and we get a lot of really positive feedback in those. Those people are interested. They want to know what we're there for. What are we talking about? And then when you tell them, they are really interested.
Okay.
We have something called the Fast Action Network, which I think is a really great way for people to get involved, that are like interested but not sure what it means to be doing activism. In this case, our Fast Action Network is about digital actions. So it's quick and easy. It normally takes 2 or 3 minutes, 3 or 4 times a week. And those actions build up. We are a grassroots organization. So the more people that take action, the more power we have in making change. And so that's been really impactful to like help bring people together from around the world and push for positive change too. And we have change makers in our community. So they're individuals that are volunteers that work with our organizers, who want to work in their community to engage more people. And so they're incredible people that do a lot to help us have support when we want to run these campaigns.
Yeah. It sounds like you've had to, like most of us, get creative and find solutions to these things, ways to cut through and get through to people, getting around the politics of it and what's put in people's mind by that or their preconceived notions of things. How do you arrive those places? How do you, like, do you guys have a process that you've put into place, or are there, how do you do that creative problem solving?
Yeah, well, we have launches of projects. So we bring teams together to really brainstorm on what we're going to try and achieve, like what we're aiming for. How can we innovate on this? One of our core values at THL is innovation, and we want to be thinking about pushing the envelope. We know that's not always going to work. Like, it's also about celebrating in failures. That's one of the things we're trying to get better at, where it's like you have to try and you're not always going to succeed, but it's important to try new things, and to do like A/B testing wherever possible and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's about bringing the best people that we have. Incredible people at THL. I'm so lucky for the team we have, and they come up with really amazing ideas, and we've just launched a global campaign. So we have something called the Open Wing Alliance, which we founded back in 2016, bringing organizations around the world together as an alliance to end cages for laying hens. So we have organizations around the world, and we've just launched our global campaign against QP to push for them to make a global commitment and end cages in their supply chain. And it's just amazing how we can bring people from around the world together on this subject all at once. And I find that super inspiring too. It's great.
I don't know. This is just an observation that I'm I think people, for some reason, people that are not would not consider themselves activists, have this idea that people who are angry people out there. And I'm sitting here with you and with many of the guests that I have on this show, and just, you're such a you seem like such a joyful, positive person, in the midst of something that obviously is very personal to you that you're dealing with all the time, and hitting walls and running, just keep having to figure out how to get this message out there and get change. How do you for yourself, even, and for your team, how do you stay in the positive? How do you stay in the optimism?
That's a great question. I mean, there's always good days and bad days, let's
Sure,
be
of
honest.
course.
But I mean, seeing change is so important, and we are seeing change, and that keeps me going. Like, if what we're going up against is vast.
Yeah.
There's huge amounts of money and power involved with the global industrial food system. So, like, even making small change is big change, really,
Sure.
because when doing this work, nothing would be happening. So, we're part of organizations around the world doing this, and I think that I find gives me a lot of hope, honestly. And like,
Yeah.
we are not winning our campaign right now because we're part of this global network. Like, we celebrate other people's wins in other countries, and that's just
Yeah.
like remarkable. There's progress happening everywhere, and it's really important to just remind ourselves of that. I think, I think people can think activism is about being angry. We are passionate people. I think
Yeah.
that's true.
Of course.
And I think, and we will raise the subject. We will talk about uncomfortable things to people, and people can take that in different ways. But I think the most impact we can have is when we engage people in a positive way. Like, if it's anything to do with shaming, or if it's about shouting at people or being super negative, like, who's going to change anything or listen to that? Like, that's not going to get you anywhere,
Right.
unfortunately.
Defenses just immediately go up, and
yeah, absolutely. You don't want to speak to someone if they're shouting at you, and you don't want to speak to someone if they're like, you're a terrible person. So it's about like telling stories and understanding what people care about, because people do care, and that's the really important thing. Sometimes I think in this work it can feel like nobody cares. Like, we're like, how is this still happening? How does factory farming exist? Like, I have days where I'm just like, how is this still happening every day?
Right.
But at the same time, then I'll also meet people who really care and are like, oh, I'm so glad you're doing this work. I didn't know about it. I'm going to get involved. And it's just like, yeah, we're doing really important work, and people really care. And the more we talk about it, the more we talk to people about it, the more people we can bring in. It's not a finite pool that we have of people. There's new people coming all the time that learn and care about this. So it's important to stay positive.
I want to go back to what you were saying about innovation, because I think and I'm constantly advocating for the fact that I think innovation has to be at the heart of every nonprofit endeavor. You guys are out there solving the world's biggest problems, and the world is constantly changing. You have to be innovating. You have to be adapting for that. But simultaneously, you're up against the wall of directed funding, and all those challenges that nonprofits have that make it difficult to take those risks, to innovate, to try things that might fail. Things that, I used the example recently. Apple, for the last 10 years, had a project to develop a car and spent billions on it. And then they're just like, well, that didn't work out. And their stock price didn't even dip. Like, it was like they spent billions on this thing, researching it, because that's what they do. They try things, and sometimes they work, and you get the iPhone, and sometimes they don't, and you have a shelved project. Nonprofits very rarely have the ability to do that, to actually just, even on a much smaller scale, not even saying billions, but like, let's put $100,000 into a campaign and see in a new way and see if it takes off. Oh, it didn't work. Well, we learned things from it. How have you overcome that, as with stating innovation as a value? How have you been able to do that with donors who, or I don't know, maybe you don't have donors that are that demanding, but most people do. So I don't know. How have you guys overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, it's important that we have impact, right? Like, it can't be that we spend 5 years trying something with nothing else to show for it.
Sure.
So I think one of the things that is important is getting good at what you do. Like, I think that's one of the, it can, I think, be easy to want to do all these different things, right? And so you're doing lots, but like, are you doing things really well? And one of the things we've tried to do is stay with our niche in the movement and be like, this is what we know we're good at. It's corporate engagement work, it's policy work. This is what we should be like getting really excellent at and innovating and moving the needle with. And I think one of the things that's helped us is being part of this global alliance, is being part of those alliances. We now have the Animal Policy Alliance as well, which is bringing together groups in the US. We have 15 groups currently. We're growing that now. It started like 2 years ago, this work. And that is, again, it's bringing together organizations that are learning how to do policy work, to push for policy at like a city level or a state level. So we don't always have to be the ones doing the trying. We can learn from others, and we can also do what we're doing. So I think that's really helpful and like helps us maximize effectiveness there. I would be lying if I say I would say that we do have a challenge sometimes where it's like, well, we don't want to like do something too big and scary if it's going to fail.
Right.
So we have to weigh out like, when should we do that? And when should we?
Of course.
Like, go with what we know, kind of thing. And so we're definitely trying new things, and it's working for us right now, and that's super exciting.
Yeah.
But there's other things that we know are getting a bit that we need to like innovate a bit more on, and so we're trying to think about what can we do there that will that can still ensure that we're winning campaigns.
Yeah,
it is a bit new. So yeah, it is tricky. I think it's tricky for the nonprofit sector in general, that you can also find something that works, but only works for so long, and so you have to keep evolving.
Exactly.
You can't just and so for sure it's a challenge, I would say, but it's one. I do think we're very fortunate. We have our donors are wonderful, and they do see, I think, innovation is important. They do see that like what we're doing is working, but also it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the thing, right, with nonprofits. It's hard.
It
like,
is.
If it was already happening, it would be
it'd be easy.
Wouldn't be doing it. Like, you're going up against something that doesn't want it to happen. So
right. Yeah, I think that's the thing. I'm constantly like, we're asking these organizations to solve the problems of the world on a shoestring budget, and instead of, hey, let's let them let them be the experts in this and figure out what's the best way to do it and try new things. And yeah, I mean, if you're constantly dropping the ball, then it's like, okay, these aren't the people to do it. They're not the experts in it, the same with any other company. But I know so many nonprofits that are hamstrung because they're all of their donations come in and go, we want it to go to this program or that program or these proven things. With you, maybe it's a little different too, because advocacy is such a big part of it, and that can look so many different ways, and it's still part of the core of it. And it's not, you're not saying these dollars are going to that kid or these dollars are going to this family or that type of thing. But I'm impressed with your resilience and your enthusiasm in the face of what many would probably just be like, oh, feels like an endless battle. But I do think one thing that's hugely impressive, all that's hugely impressive, but another thing is I'm always pushing nonprofits to collaborate, and your network that has to be so beneficial also, just for those encouragements of like, oh, there's other people out there, and we're not alone in this, and all of that. So that's have there been challenges on the networking side of that, or working with other people, or has it been mostly pretty beneficial?
It's been extremely beneficial. I think the Open Way Alliance is like a really positive place. I think with we've trying to elevate like people. We do summits in like different regions. So we had a summit in Africa, and these groups are working in countries that have no one else having worked on anti-factory farming. Like, they're very inspiring people to me, because it's just like, really, they're one or two people. We've given them we give grants as well, so we can support them in these countries to do this work.
Yeah.
And like when they come together, for them as well, it's just like, oh, there's other people doing this work. I'm not alone. And I think that's a beautiful community to be part of. And I think that has really shone through. And at THL, we provide resources for organizations because again, like by having that central hub where you can supply these organizations that are only 2 or 3 people, they can't have like an animal welfare specialist or some other kind of specialist they need, but they can link into our resources and be able to utilize that. So that's worked really well too. I think there's always challenges when it comes to agreeing on things. So one of the powerful things that we have as the Alliance is we're working to end cages for laying hens. It's amazing. We've also got something called the Better Chicken Commitment, and that's at different stage. This is to improve the welfare of animals, of chickens raised for meat. And that's at different stages around the world. And so, of course, different companies being pushed in different ways, and that can provide challenges, but it's about that collaboration, and that's so important. It's like having the collaboration, having the communication. We have platforms where we communicate together, and then we have these summits where we bring people together. So I think people get to know each other. That's really important, right? Like, actually knowing the people. I think that makes a big difference too.
Well, community, I think community is the best solution to so many problems, like so many people are trying to do things alone, and that's in every different area. But to realize if I can bring what I bring and you bring what you bring, and we can work together, we can do so much more. The phrase may be overused, but it's true, is better together. We can do so much more together than apart. And getting nonprofits to think that way and to see those opportunities will, I think, is just an opportunity to make more good in the world and more effectiveness. So I have a couple questions that are curiosity questions on my part, less more about specifics what you're doing with the the campaigns that you're doing and to raise the quality of life for these animals. Is there not government regulation at all for this? Like, is that part of it, is lobbying for government regulation, or is that something where it's like they're just not going to do that, they're not involved, or they keep the standards at such a minimum and they're not interested in raising it? I genuinely, I don't know enough about this, and I'm just curious.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of our theory of change is to get companies to commit to high welfare standards and then to push for legislation to like finish that off with a nice little leap. It's like officially now. You can't go back. So we worked on, for instance, Prop 12 in California to get that legislation. That's some of the strongest legislation for farm animals in the world. So ending the sale, not just the production of eggs from cage systems. And there's 10 state bans now in the US with this. It's very similar. If we look over to Europe, they have much stronger protections. They have protection, indeed. They have protections for all animals raised for food, land animals, I should say. And those protections don't go far enough, obviously. I think we all knew it's going to come, but they are at least in existence. And here in the US, while we have these state bans banning certain production systems, so gestation crates for mother pigs and veal crates for calves, as well as cages for hens, that's only in 10 states. And then when you get to a federal level, we really don't have legislation protecting animals in any way. There just is nothing for farm animals. Nothing at the slaughter, nothing raising those animals. There are certifications. Some of them are better than others, but of course they're not mandatory in any way. So we do push for protections. Part of the Animal Policy Alliance is to support groups at grassroots pushing for protections in their cities, at state level too. We want to push for more states to end cages for laying hens, for instance. That's really important work.
Yeah. I'm always amazed at how much leeway the marketing departments have at these companies to use words that will mislead you into thinking that this is something that it's not, and how little regulation there is on that, to be able to say, you can't call it organic, you can't call it this unless it's there's some sort of certification, because people just can use these words, and I know there's some, but it's crazy because as a consumer, you don't have time to go and research every single thing you're purchasing at the supermarket. You hope you can trust a label, but you can't.
Yeah, there is some very minimal protections, like we say, with
Sure.
organic and things that like slightly raise the bar. Like free range, what it means, but like free range means like a pop hole, like one for like a barn of
Right.
thousands of animals. Like that's not really doing anything. Yeah, I think I'm always amazed at the like image on the package, which is like depicts this lovely, family farm. There's like a
Yes.
chicken and there's a cow and there's a pig, and it's like, no, these animals never see each other.
No.
These animals are not on the same farm. There is none of this. This is not real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all to make me feel better about what I'm buying, and yeah, based on if I've heard some of this stuff, then it's just enough to go, oh no, that's not us, even though it probably is. The last question I had, and I don't know if you know much about this, I had read this article last year on using a type of was it like algae or like seaweed or something as feed that was better for the animals and didn't produce the carbon gases and all those type of things. Do you know about that? Is that something that is being researched more?
Yes. So there's like the actual animal's diet, and then there's shifting to algae farming. So if we talk about the animal's diet, a lot of the beef that is reared, or chickens or pigs, use soy, and soy is being the rainforest, the Amazon rainforest is being chopped down for that soy. So moving animals away from that protein dense product of soy to algae, for instance, can massively reduce the footprint and impact the environment that these animals are having just by eating food, let alone the actual animal itself. And then there's also farmers that have been doing fish farming, or the seas are overfished. We don't have enough fish left in the seas. Farming of fish, is rising. Aquaculture is rising, and it's polluting. It's doing all the things that it does on the land. It's doing it in the sea now, or in the lakes. Sometimes it's actually on land, like they're built in concrete factory farms for fish, basically. And so where there's encouragement for producers to move to algae farming. And when they do that in the sea, for instance, they see a huge amount of biodiversity come in as well. So it has like a double whammy impact of increasing in positive environmental impact, reducing pollution and everything else that goes with that, and reducing animal cruelty. No animals are hurt in algae farming, and then actually creating this safe space where all these other animals, sea animals can come in. It's amazing. So yeah, there's two different things. There's the food that's used to feed the animals, and then there's actually switching away from producing animals for food and moving to algae farming.
Interesting. So there are solutions out there, and it's just getting people to be willing to make some changes.
Yeah, it's happening. The world is changing.
Little by little.
yeah, little by little. Exactly.
Awesome. Okay. Few closing questions for you. One that I ask everyone is there someone in the world of nonprofits that you'd like to take to lunch? Someone that you just really respect and would want to pick their brains?
We have someone, well, there's lots of people, quite frankly. Some of those people I do get to go to lunch with, so I feel very fortunate. But we have organizations in the Alliance like East in Taiwan. They're an amazing organization. They've been doing this work for a while. They've got bans on cages and other things there. And Wu Hung is the executive director there, and I would love to meet him because I've not met him in person. I just think he is a remarkable man who's achieved a lot, and I would love to learn from him. So I think he'd be one of the people that I would love to go to lunch with.
Nice. And what is the thing in your job that brings you the most joy?
I mean, knowing that animals going out of cages is when we see companies make a commitment, when we see companies actually like reach 100% cage free, for instance, like we win a campaign, like that is just like, yes, we're moving forward, this is happening.
That's great.
So that brings me a lot of joy. And then just in my role at THL, I really enjoy coaching and mentoring and doing that kind of work as well, and strategy work I really enjoy too, like thinking strategically about things and what and how are we going to do this, and what's next. So yeah, I'd say that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find out more about Humane League and connect with you and your organization?
You can go to the humaneleague.org
Okay.
to find out more on our website. You can join the Fast Action Network there by going to Get Involved. You can go to the Fast Action Network, and then you can learn a bit about the campaigns that we're doing. Yeah, so I think that's probably the best place to find us. You
And
can
where can
find
people...
Instagram and Twitter and all those places as well with the Humane League handle.
Perfect. And where can people find that documentary?
CommonEnemyFilm.com.
CommonEnemyFilm.com. I got to check that out. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Vicky, for joining me today. This has been so eye-opening and enlightening, and it's always so interesting to see how in different areas and at different scales, nonprofits are all kind of facing the same battles, and there's so much to be learned from each other and the battles and the things that the solutions we find and all of that. It's been this has been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Creating Good with Matt Barnes is recorded at Rogue Collective in beautiful Newport Beach, California. It's hosted and executive produced by me, Matt Barnes. Post-production is by our amazing friends over at Fame, the B2B podcast agency. Writing is by Matt Barnes and Taylor Bolanos from Rogue Creatives. Creative direction and design is overseen by Corey Hill of Rogue Creatives. Theme music is composed and performed by Jared Atherton of Chapters. Huge thanks to our amazing guests for joining us this episode, and thank you to all of you incredible listeners for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, and I would imagine you did if you're still listening, so don't forget to help us spread some good by giving us a good review. Preferably like 5 stars, lots of really nice words. It's very helpful. Also, tell your friends and subscribe so we can come straight into your potholes each and every time we have a new episode. Take the Creating Good pledge on our website at creatinggood.co. We'll catch you next time. This has been a Rogue Creatives production.